Alright, so the one thing we forgot to do is run this with cars behind it to see if there would be any problems with it. We ran it through all the switches with the new traction tires, no problem, but now I have some cars. I've got 4 of the Strasburg wood-sided cars behind it. And these cars they have some weight to them, so they're not the lightest passenger cars out there. So we're going to see, because we do have a grade that we have to go up to, and we're going to see if that actually goes up the grade without a problem. So we're going to just... It up the grade, but it does slip right at the peak. Alright, so now we added all 6 cars to it, so that's a lot for this small engine. So I'm not even sure if with the Lionel traction tires it would go up a grade, but we're going to try it with 6 on here and see what happens. So let's run it up the grade here. Push it. So it cannot make it up the grade with 6 cars on it. Alright, so as you can see, it didn't make it up with 6 cars. They're just too heavy for it to pull, and the tires are slipping on it. Now, like I said, the MTH tires that we put on here are thinner, so there's a possibility that what's happening is they're stretching around the wheel, because if you think of them like a rubber band, right? If you have a really thin rubber band, you can stretch it really far, right? If you have a really thick, heavy rubber band, it's much harder to pull and stretch, right? So the Lionel tires are super thick, right? So they probably do not stretch at all, whereas the MTH ones, which are much thinner, might be stretching or even slipping around the wheel, which is why it's having a problem getting up the grade, right? Either that, or even with the Lionel ones, I should have tested it ahead of time and I didn't, but even with the Lionel ones, the engine might be too light to be able to pull this many cars. I've never had a problem with any engine ever on my grade being able to go over it. Any engine that had traction tires, MTH or Lionel. So this is the only engine that's having that issue, but again, we replaced the Lionel tires with MTH ones, which are much thinner. So what are we going to do about it? Well, what we're going to try is, I have a grid, a sheet that tells me all the MTH tire sizes, and we put on the MTH DE 0000025s. I'm going to try the same thing, the DE23s. So they're the same exact width tire, but their diameter is a little bit smaller. The outside diameter of the tire is a little bit smaller, which might give me a tighter fit around the wheel. And that may be enough to, make it go over the hill, if it happens to be the fact that the tire is actually stretching or slipping around the wheel. Now, if it's not, if the tire is actually not stretching or slipping around the wheel, then it's just the engine is just too small to pull this many cars up a grade. So I'm not sure. The only way to test that out for sure is to put the Lionel traction tires back on and see if it'll pull all 6 of these. So before I actually put the new MTH ones on, I think what I'm going to do is put the Lionel ones back on the engine and then see if it goes up the grade. And then if it does, then we're going to try the other MTH tires and see if that resolves it. So we got 2 steps we got to do here. This is so ridiculous. I got to like fool around with this engine to get it to work on Lionel track and switches, right? If the traction tires were the right thickness to begin with from Lionel, we wouldn't have this issue. So let's let me go put the Lionel ones back on. We'll leave the 6 cars on here and see if we can make it up the hill with the Lionel tires, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so I put the Lionel traction tires back on, forgot about the switch, of course, and you can see right here, it derailed right off the switch, right? So as soon as I put these back on, you saw before, this ran through this fine, put the Lionel ones back on, you can see, I don't know if you can see it underneath there, but the pilot is going one direction and the wheels are trying to go another, picked it, and if I pull this off right here, you're going to be able to see it when I yank this off right here, that this picked the switch. You can see it right there. Okay? So, yeah, terrible. So we're going up the grade. Okay, so with the Lionel traction tires, I can pull 6 cars up the grade without a problem. So their tires are much thicker and they don't stretch. So we only have one more recourse for this engine, and that is to actually replace the MTH ones with a smaller MTH set and see if that works. If it doesn't work, I'm returning this engine. It's going back. I'm not paying $720 for an engine that can't run on a Lionel Fastrack layout. So we're going to give it one more shot here. So let's see what happens. So I got the newer MTH traction tires, the ones that are one size smaller on, and we're going to see if it makes it up the grade with the 6 cars. So let's do it. So even with the smaller traction tires, I think they're just a little too thin, so they're not quite thick enough, and it does not make it up the grade with 6 cars. So we're gonna back it up and take 2 cars off and see what happens. Here we go with 4 cars. So with the smaller MTH traction tires, I can get 4 cars. It'll go. It does slip a tiny bit at the peak of the grade, but it makes it over it and it keeps going. Now, that slipping, I'm sure, is not going to be good for the overall longevity of the traction tire, right? So they may need to be replaced more often. So in essence, right, the Lionel traction tires are too thick. They derail on the switches, which you saw when I put them back on, it immediately derailed on that switch. But the MTH ones are a little too thin and stretchy, so it can't quite make it when it's pulling a lot of weight. So it can only pull 4 of the MTH wood-sided cars. It can't pull the 6 car set. So it's not perfect either way. So you live with derailing or you live with not being able to pull all your cars. So it's one of the two. So I'm not really happy about the end result overall with this engine, and I'm not sure it's worth keeping. for that kind of money. And, you know, I'll see. I'm going to go back to my dealer and see what they say. Because Lionel still, after all this time, when I posted my first video, has not responded to me at all. Just completely ignored my support ticket. So I'm not sure what else to do besides get a refund and have them send it back to Lionel and they can use it for parts or something. I don't know. So anyway, that's where we are. Unfortunately, it's not a 100% fix. If you're running this on flats only and you don't have a grade, then you're probably fine. So if you got Fastrack, you got switches, and it's all flat, then replacing the Lionel tires with the MTH ones will solve your problem and you'll be okay. If you also have a grade like mine, then you're going to have an issue depending how steep your grade is and how many cars you're pulling behind it. Where the MTH ones just don't quite have enough meat on them. They're not quite stiff enough to get over, you know, to pull it. So it's not the engine. The engine can do it. As you saw with the Lionel tires, it went right over the grade without any slipping. But unfortunately, they're just a little too thick. So the resolution is to get a little bit thinner tires on the Lionel ones, you know, and that's what they should be doing to fix these engines. But so that's going to be it, guys. I don't have a good 100% resolution for this, depending on how your layout is and what track you're running. So, but that's where we're at.